welcome Eric Rosenberg!
So it's 8:35 in the morning and I'm standing in the front foyer of Hillcrest High School. I count again that there's 40 students, mostly sitting on the linoleum floor, cross-legged with jackets on their laps and distracting themselves with their iPhones. I think 2 or 3 are falling asleep, and I'm trying not to pay attention to the ones that don't get that standing in the front entrance as people walk by is a problem. There's a woman standing next to me who, for the 5th time in 5 minutes, has asked me a question to which I don't know the answer. I look to the clock on the wall, hoping it might know something. And there's a tension in my arms, but it's not enough that I'm gonna throw a punch. And a pressure in my face, but not enough that I'm gonna cry. All of this is leading me to wonder why I ever took this job. You see, 10 years earlier, when I decided to have a second career as a high school teacher, I thought I really wanted to engage kids in learning to help them become more enterprising as people. And at the time, it was really hard to get a full-time job. So I started substitute teaching, filling in for pregnant teachers, and started doing some life coaching in the evening, so the part-time thing kind of became my steady income. And recently, when Doug Ford became premier, I could see that that situation was at risk, and that I needed to get a full-time job. And so that's how last February I started as a full-time teacher at Hillcrest High School. And the day before classes, I got an email from my principal saying that I was gonna be teaching grade 12 law. Now, most of what I know about law, I've learned watching Suits. And I was gonna be teaching kids who had taken the grade 11 course. Don't worry, wrote the principal, we have textbooks. And I'm not really a textbook guy. I want to engage in the, your relationship to the law and community building and what is justice for you. And 3 months in, I could see with this group that was totally not going to work. I would ask questions, and the students would stare blankly, waiting for me to answer. The worst were the few students with death stares, angry about marks they'd been receiving. They weren't going to get into U of T pharmacy because of me. And I've been called down to the principal's office like 3 times already. And getting called down, it doesn't change as an adult. It's still such a terrible, it's a terrible feeling. And she wanted to talk about how kids had been coming to her complaining, and wanted to look at some of the projects that I was coming up with. And I guess I felt defensive. I felt pretty alone. There was my department head she had invited me to the after-school law club and pointed out an online resource that was helpful, and invited to see if I wanted to bring my students along on a field trip to the courthouse. And about a week before the field trip, she got a promotion to another school. And so they brought in Madame Fournier, a retired French teacher, to fill in for the last 6 weeks. In the week that I had known Madame Fournier, she had been confused a couple of times about how the permission forms worked, and had asked also about the projector. And each morning, just as class was about to start, she had some frantic questions about the lesson plans. And so now there's 40 students sitting on the floor. They got there at 8:15 because I wanted to make sure that they were early. The bus is 5 minutes late in a world where everything always goes on time. Madame Fournier is standing beside me asking, Rosenberg, where's the bus? Rosenberg, where's the bus? And everybody seems to think that I'm in charge. I walk into the office, and the only person there is a secretary who I don't know. I say, pardon me, excuse me, but I think my bus is late. Without looking up from what she's doing, she asks, where's your yellow form? I look in the file they've given me, and there's no yellow form. The bus driver needs a yellow form, she says without looking up. And then I know, I will get you a yellow form, she says for me. And so she looks into her file, her world of files, and finds what she's looking for. And we call the bus company, who calls the bus driver, who calls us back to say, the bus driver's in the back of the school. So I run to the back of the school, and there's no bus. So I come back to the office, and we call the bus company to call the bus driver to call us to say, oh, we're at Hillthorne High School. We'll be there in a few moments. So by the time the bus gets here, the kids have been waiting an hour, and everybody piles on, and I'm last to do the head count. And it's a full bus, except for the one open seat, which is next to Madame Fournier. So I sit, and she proceeds to give me a tour about, this is the street where my son used to play floor hockey. And I nod along. And my husband really likes walking the dog in this park. And I nod along. And I think I have coupons for this restaurant. And though I stop nodding, she continues to share. I start to daydream I'm someplace else. And then the bus driver starts sharing about all the terrible drivers. Oh, look at these people. This guy doesn't know how to drive. And while he's tearing through a yellow light, he's complaining about a pedestrian. And I want to stand up and I say, stop talking to me. Stop asking me questions. I don't know the answers. I'm on the wrong bus. But instead, I don't say anything, and Madame Fournier starts to talk about how stuffy it is, how terribly stuffy it is, how hot she is, how uncomfortable she is. So when we get to the intersection, I stand up. We stop at an intersection. I stand up, reach across, and try to open a window for her. Only it's a little bit stuck, and in that moment of pause, the bus driver turns and starts explaining to me how to open a window. And that's when I'm really ready to lose it, to tell him, just, I know how to open a window. Take off your coat, lady. But before I can say anything, the bus pulls ahead and I fall in my seat, and somehow the window slides open. So we get to the courthouse, and the kids are terrific. They line up against a wall, and I go in, and there's a relic of a woman sitting behind some scratched glass, and she hands me a stack of maps with court times and details, and I ask her, are the kids allowed to walk on their own? She might have said yes, I don't really know, but I walk back to my students and I hand out the maps and I make up some rules, like, don't talk in the court, and be in the canteen at 12:30, and whatever you do, don't leave the building. It takes them a moment to get that they're dismissed, and the next moment later, I'm by myself. So I find a seat with a view of the exit and pull out my book, and for the first time in a while, I take a deep breath. And then Madame Fournier, she's walking towards me, and she's holding something. Here, she says, I brought you a coffee. Yeah, that is so nice. And then she reaches into her pocket for some creamers and sugar. Like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. And then she sits down and she starts asking me about the book I'm reading. And I'm like, well, it's solutions-based dialogue, and it's helping me discover the distinction between coaching and teaching, and I really think there's a way we could do this different, and she's asking me questions, and I'm telling her more. And before I know it, an hour's gone by, and she says to me, would you like to take yourself for lunch? Yes, I would like to take myself for lunch. And I do take myself for lunch, and then I come back, and she goes for lunch, and then the kids are on the canteen, and then we're back on the bus. And the driver, he's like, these terrible drivers, but I'm like, you're right, they are lousy drivers. And then she's like, look at that restaurant. I want to go to that restaurant. Because I realized that it's not about the bus, it's about me. And I'd love to tell you that we got back to school and everything was different, except these are students who wanted the textbooks. So I gave them the textbooks. And then 6 weeks later, I ended the semester and I left the school. So 2 weeks now I've been at a different school, and for sure it's more comfortable for me. But I don't want to say that it's better or worse, because I realize it's not about that. It's about how I show up. And so, I'm having a lot of fun tonight. It's great to be here, but it's a school night. So I might not stick around too much longer because it's time for me it's my bedtime. I got to get some rest because tomorrow I want to show up ready to engage. Thank you very much.